You can be a fantastic salesperson and not have that skill set. I have seen fantastic salespeople who can't close. Why? Because they don't have the ability to know how to negotiate the deal. That closing part is different than the sales part.
If I posted right now on my Instagram and was like, I want to ban all Muslims from America without any context, that's a racist thing to say, because unless you give context, in the same way that if I say I'm going to ban black people from my restaurant, unless you give context, the reason is because I'm going to assume it's racist, is because that's what racist people do. That's how racist people communicate, right? Like, does that make sense what I'm saying? In the sense of, he might not be a racist. I think he knows the way he's communicating is talking to racists and is getting them to like him and get votes for him. I think the way he speaks, he is very conscious of it. He literally wrote a book on business. He's a billionaire. Billionaires? I'm sorry. You cannot become a billionaire without knowing how to communicate. That's just not true. That's like non-existent. I think he's insanely good at communicating. He's one of the best salesmen in the world, right? He's a fucking
negotiator are not
billionaire.
the same thing, bro. He's a fantastic negotiator. You can be a fantastic negotiator and not be a great communicator.
Do you think you have to be good at sales? Do you think you need to be a good communicator?
I think that to be good at sales, it helps to be a good communicator. Yeah, no, I can tell you this, but this is not, I'm gonna tell you a fact. To be good at sales, it helps to be a good communicator. You do not need to be a good communicator. It helps drastically.
Can you give an example of someone being good at sales without being
Everybody who has ever worked in a call center,
communicate well?
a high pressure, one call close call center, those are not good communicators. Most of them, I have run 30, 50, 100 seat call centers in ghetto industry.
Mhm.
The majority of those people show up to work inebriated, high, ghetto, bad situation. Yep, because they know how to do one thing. They know how to negotiate the high pressure situation that they're in that moment. Put those people on a seller call, they wouldn't do fine, right? Because they're good at that one thing. So what I'm telling you is that you can be a good closer and not be a great communicator. You can be a good negotiator and not be a good communicator. If you're a fantastic communicator, you can also be average at those things. I'll tell you a great example. Me. I've always been a decent communicator. I've always had a way with words. I've always been a great.
Yeah, I think you're really good at communicating.
For the longest time, I couldn't close a deal. You know why? Because I didn't know the difference between selling and closing, because that is not the same thing. So you have to understand the difference between when it's time to stop selling and time to start closing. There's differences in parts of communication. Sure. Inherently, some of us are just better at doing certain parts of the conversation. You can be a fantastic negotiator simply because you walk into the situation and you're good at being high pressured. You're good at doing a pull away. You're good at saying, hey, look, here's the thing, right? Give you a fantastic example. This has gone viral recently, right? The whole Trump situation with the way he negotiated with the head of the Taliban at the time. He showed up in the situation and says, hey, we're going to pull out. Here's how it's going to work. Here's a picture.
President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And the translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him.
Yes.
Tell him what I said. Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
He knew how to negotiate with few words. You do not need to be a good communicator. Matter of fact, being a fantastic communicator and not knowing how to negotiate is also possible. Being a good communicator and knowing how to do those things, now you're the best of all the worlds. But it's not required, I promise you.
Can I ask you a clarifying question? What's the difference between communication in your head and negotiating? Like, what do those? In my head, negotiation is a type of communication. So, like, what do you mean by like in my head, those two are the same thing? When you're negotiating, you're communicating in a specific way to get what you want. So, tell me, what do you mean? Like, how are they different in your head?
Because you can be a good negotiator by having good emotional control. What do I mean? Good negotiators are comfortable with walking away from the deal. Most People aren't, right? When you listen to somebody who's a fantastic closer, they have no problem making it sound like, dude, I can walk away. I don't need this. You can be a fantastic salesperson and not have that skill set. That closing part is different than the sales part. It's why you see all these people that's become popular now. People are like, oh, closers are losers, or they don't like the word closer, or it's a tacky thing. That's cool. I get that. I understand that. But it's also wrong. It's just demonstrative lack of understanding of the sales process, because selling and closing are not the same thing. And if you want to use a different word because it sounds better, that's fine. I get that. But closing is a very, very different skill than selling. This is why in most sales floors, they have what's called a TO. You know what a TO is? Stands for takeover. It's the closer. That's the person who walks around the sales floor in a call center and listens for a person who's done a good job teeing it up, but they're fumbling it. They don't know how to close it. So they step in, they take over the call, and they close it. They do no selling. They do no talking. All they're doing is negotiating for the close. They did none of the front end part. It's a smaller conversation. They use fewer words. They don't have to be great communicators, right? Timeshares, same exact thing. The person tees it up. They do the stuff. They do the report. They do all the thing. Then the guy comes in at the end. Here's what we're going to do. What are they doing? They're negotiating. They're showing the numbers back and forth. Let me go to my boss. It's actually very little talking, very little communicating, because all of that part has been done. We're down to business. You want this or you want that. And you know what those people have to do oftentimes, Jonah? They have to speak in extremes. They have to speak in extremes because they have to paint a picture for you. Closers' jobs is painting a picture, and that requires painting a big, sometimes exciting picture. Have you ever known anybody who's a really, really fantastic motivator, communicator, or closer who's been known or have a tendency of lying or embellishing for the sake of selling, and they call it white lies or storytelling?
Yeah, most salespeople do that.
There you go. Why? Because they understand a principle that they operate under, that in order to get people's attention, you got to use big, extreme examples, right? Now, I don't think you have to do that. I actually take the school of thought that if you're skilled enough, you don't have to do that. But do you know what skill you have to develop in order to not have to lie and use big embellishing stories? There's one skill you have to develop. You know what it is?
Sure. Tell me. Negotiating? I don't know. Just tell me.
Communicating. It's funny that we actually get here, because this is actually what I talk about. People ask me about lying in sales. People ask me about white lies. People ask me about storytelling. And I always say, I get it. People do it. And these people have good intentions. They have a good heart. I'm not knocking these people. I don't do it. Why? Because I look at it as a personal challenge. If I am a good enough communicator, I don't need to lie, which means that the absence of communication skills is filled by embellishing or big words or bombastic speech or storytelling, which is exactly how Trump communicates.
I just want to make sure, because here's my definitions of communication versus negotiation. When I say communication skills, because I think I just don't think we have the same definitions. So I'm trying to understand your definition right now.
Sure.
When I say communication skills, that means anytime I'm saying anything to you. In my opinion, being a good communicator means I got across to you the message or the image that I wanted to get across to you. In my opinion, being a great communicator means that whenever I say something to you, Quijano, I say it in the way that I want you to receive it. When I say something, you don't misunderstand me. You aren't sure what I said. You're like, I completely understood exactly what you're saying. And on top of that, you're feeling the emotions that I wanted you to feel whatever I said.
I'm good with that. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. So what you said with negotiating, just because I'm saying few words doesn't mean I'm not communicating what I want to communicate to you, right? Being a hard closer, I'm still communicating exactly what I want to communicate to you in a very easy terms. You either are buying this at $450 or we don't have a freaking deal, right? I don't need to say a bunch of words to communicate how I want you to feel about that, how I want you to take that, and what I want from the situation, right? I think that is good communication skills.
It's not, though, because you're missing the sales process. In all of these examples, the sales pitch is already assumed. It's understood, right? All of these situations, none of them require it to be sold from scratch, right? So when you call an agent for the first time and you've never talked to this agent before, you have to introduce what you do, who you are and the value you add from scratch every single time, right? Okay. Let's say you are doing a follow up call and I'm like, hey, Jonah, I got this agent. I've been working with them for months. They're already familiar with everything. They want to talk to you about this deal. When you walk into that call, is the conversation the same as your intro call because you've never spoken to them before? Or is the conversation different because you know they already understand the full gist?
Yeah, it's different.
Conversation's completely different. Why? Because you're approaching with the intent to close. You are in the negotiation phase, not the sales phase. The way you communicate will be different because your brain is in a different place of the conversation. Make sense?
Sure. Do you think Trump doesn't know how to do the sales process though? Like, you don't think he understands that?
I don't think he has to. And because he doesn't have to, he hasn't done it for so long. So he just goes straight for the close. He's a closer. This is my deductive reasoning as a person who pays attention to communication styles literally for a living. When I look at Donald Trump, I look at a guy who has spent the majority of his career, at least the last 40 years, speaking to high level people at a high level. He doesn't need to qualify his statement because people who are billionaires who have people who report to them don't qualify their statements. It's a nature of the position combined with 40 years of habit of speaking in that way. So this guy is used to speaking up here. He's done it for an entire career. He does not go to the onboarding of his brand new staff and say, all right, guys, so here's what we're going to do today. I want you to have a fantastic experience. We want you to know you're a part of the family. He's like, hey, guys, what are we doing with this? The numbers are this. The numbers are shit. Guys, everybody knows this isn't working. The guys are kicking our ass. Our competition's fucking destroying us. What are we doing to get this right? Get your shit together. This is how you speak at that place. He's spoken like this for 40 plus years. When he transitions into politics, he's not going to rechange that habit as a 70-year-old man. Now, arguably, should he? One could argue, yeah, I could see the value in that because your constituents, the voting block you're reaching, doesn't speak that language. They need the context. They need the constant repetition. You know who was fantastic at explaining it at a basic level? Barack freaking Obama. That dude spoke like he was speaking to just the everyday person. He made it simple. He made it palatable. He made it digestible. Why? Because he was a fantastic communicator. I don't see a Barack Obama as a fantastic closer. If I'm building a sales organization, he's my front guy. He's my salesperson. I'm not bringing him in as the closer because the nature of the character that needs to be existent when you're closing is and can be slightly different than the nature of the character of the rapport builder. That is why in a lot of sales organizations, these are two different roles because sometimes with certain sales processes to get to the close, you have to be willing to be an animal. You have to be willing to be relentless. You have to be willing to show no fear. And that is a contradictory personality than the one who built rapport. And so if you don't want to mess up that experience, it has to be two different people for the sake of having somebody else to blame. It's the good guy, bad guy thing. This is good cop, bad cop. It's the nature of the sales process. So I would argue that as a communicator to the nation, Barack Obama is a fantastic salesperson. He's a great rapport builder. He makes everybody feel comfortable. He's got a soft voice. He can sing a little bit. He got some swag. He's got some all. But you know who Trump is? Trump's the dude with the big necklace that's saying, all right, I'm glad you had a good time with all that bullshit. You got some money or not, right? And so he speaks at that level. Arguably, as a politician, this is why I believe so many people have a problem with Donald Trump and say he's not political. He's not presidential because their idea of presidential equals a good salesperson, a good presenter. He's never been a good presenter. What is he? He's a closer. He's the negotiator. He's the art of the deal. He's the guy that says all of that fluff and BS, I'm good. I don't have time for that. Why? Because we got something to get done. So you know what we're going to do while you were trying to sell these nations to stop bombing our country? You can't come into the country for 90 days. We're banning everybody. Muslims, banned. Sorry. Why? Not political, not smooth, not any of those things, not nuanced, not a good presentation. It was a closer move. It was a threat. It was a tactic of we're going to do this and you're going to get on board. Hey, China, by the way, you're not going to pay your part? That's cool. We're going to sanction you. Oh, NATO, you're not going to pay your part? That's cool. We're pulling out. This is his nature. And people get offended because it's abrasive. But you know what it is? It's the character of a closer. It's the character of a negotiator. And this is why I believe he has a hard time winning people's hearts who need to be finessed, because that's not how he communicates. He doesn't communicate as a salesperson. He communicates as a closer. Closers get stuff done. Salespeople make people feel good, but they don't always get the deal. This is the difference.
That was a really interesting theory. Like, honestly, like, I think like there's a lot of credit to what you said. That was a really interesting point to take. Maybe.
All right, guys, so the video that you just saw was a clip from a much longer podcast. To see more clips like this, click one of these videos here, and to see the entire podcast, look for that in the link in the description. See you guys next time.